Hello, my name is Emma. Some of you may know me as Amarillo Art. This is my very first long-form video, so I'm very excited to be able to post this. So for today's video, I am going to be talking about the materials that I use, focusing specifically on the graphite materials. If you'd like to see other materials in the future, like markers, paint pens, anything like that, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to make some more videos in the future about some of the other art supplies that I use. But for today's video, I will be focusing primarily on my graphite drawings and the supplies that I use for that. So if you're interested, please stick around, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like me to make more videos like this in the future. Now let's get into it. So to start off with, the pencil that I use more than any other is the Papermate Sharpwriter. I like this pencil because it is super lightweight, inexpensive, and easily replaced. I tend to drop my pencils and misplace them from time to time, so I like to have pencils that are somewhat disposable. The lightweight design also prevents the graphite from breaking inside the pencil, so the graphite ends up lasting me a lot longer than it does in regular mechanical pencils. If you're anything like me, I drop my pencils all the time, so having one that really just isn't that fragile is pretty essential. I also travel with them and stick them in my pockets, and they're always fine with no graphite breakage or damage to the actual pencil. The other thing that I really like about these pencils is the twist end. This allows you to be really precise with the amount of graphite you want, as opposed to the pushback mechanical pencils that you don't have as much control over. The graphite also never gets stuck like it does in some other mechanical pencils that I've used. On the downside, this does make it so that it only holds one piece of graphite at a time, but I find that that piece of graphite lasts significantly longer than it does in other mechanical pencils. And this is mostly because in other mechanical pencils you get little pieces that break off inside, and then you end up having to throw those pieces away, and that just never happens with these pencils, so they just last a lot longer. The twist end also prevents the graphite from spinning like they do in other mechanical pencils, which I find super frustrating, and I really love that these pencils don't do that. For the graphite, I just use the graphite that comes in the pencil. These are 0.7 sized HB pencils, which is pretty much the most standard type of graphite you can get. These aren't really designed to be reused once the graphite is used up, but I still swap it out with a fresh piece anyway when it's empty. It can be a little tricky to put in a new piece of graphite, but it is possible as long as you're careful. In the last 2 years, Papermate has actually changed the design on these pencils. The biggest difference is that they're even cheaper now, and they definitely look cheaper. The color is lighter, and it's just uglier. The eraser also isn't as good anymore, which makes me sad because I used the eraser on the old one a lot. It was just as good as some of the actual art equipment erasers that I was using, but the ones now leave streaks on the paper, so that was kind of disappointing about the new design. These pencils still work fine, but I just liked the old design significantly better. The graphite in the new pencils also feels slightly different. Most people probably wouldn't notice the difference, because I was looking at the reviews on Amazon and stuff, and most people were like, oh, well, the graphite's the same. But I definitely noticed it when I was layering. They just don't layer the same as the old graphite design, and the newer ones just take longer to build up the values, which is super annoying for me. The new design will still work fine, I just don't like them quite as much as the old design. Recently, I've also been using the Bic number 2 pencil. It is also 0.7mm HB pencil, and again, I just use whatever graphite comes in the pencil most of the time. It's pretty easy to change out the graphite if you do run out, so I will do that. I started using these pencils because I found them in a pile of old school supplies in my house. The ones I'm using are probably like 10 years old, but they still work fine. You can probably find these pencils or something similar at any department store in the school section or the office section. They're also on Amazon, and they're pretty inexpensive. So before I move on, I'm just going to talk a little bit about graphite. In case you didn't know, HB is basically just how hard or soft your pencil is. An H pencil is a harder pencil, so it's going to draw lighter, whereas a B pencil is going to be more black. It is going to be a lot softer on the page and rub off a lot easier. I like to be right in the middle because I find that H pencils tend to scratch the paper a lot easier. I'd rather just push lightly on the page than rely on the pencil to create the lighter sketch, so I've never found it necessary to use any kind of H pencil, I've always done HB or darker. As far as going darker, because of the way that I shade, I find it easier to just use HB and just do tons of layers of HB. A lot of B pencils tend to not blend as easy because they're so soft, they rub off on the page, and I just find that they're so dark that they just don't blend together super well. 2B isn't really that different from HB, so if you want something a little darker from HB, you don't want to spend as much time blending, 2B would be fine. 4B might be okay too, but I just prefer to work with HB and just build up the layers, but it really just depends on the person. So one of my favorite tools to use is the blending stump. I think these are just super fun to use. So when I said I do layers of graphite and then I do layers of blending, this is what I use to blend. I used to, when I was like really little, I would use my finger to blend, but apparently that's not great for the paper because you leave like finger oils behind on the paper and it can affect how receptive the paper is to your blending. You don't want to use anything like a Kleenex that has any oils in it because that's going to mess with the paper. Some people use Q-tips, that kind of thing, but I just like blending stumps personally, and they last forever. They're super cheap. I think they're worth investing in. They can crumble, especially if you have like sweaty hands or something. It's going to make the paper kind of peel away, because basically a blending stump is just kind of similar to newsprint type paper, or a little bit thicker than tissue paper, and then it's rolled up really tight. Holding something, just paper, it's gonna start kind of crumbling eventually, but I just take like Scotch tape, wrap it around there, and then they last me forever. I've been using the same ones ever since I started my Instagram account, so I never have to replace them. It's just a couple of dollars. I do recommend buying these at a craft store. If you go to like an art store, like a real art store like Blick or something like that, they're gonna be more expensive just because everything's more expensive at an art store, so I recommend Amazon or craft store. When I use them, I'll just do a layer of graphite, and then I will just use this to shade in the layer of graphite. Or sometimes I like to build up the graphite on the actual blending stump itself, and I'll just go in straight with the blending stump. I won't use any graphite, and I can use this for smoky backgrounds or just general shading where I don't want a ton of darkness, maybe just like a little bit or just a slight contour or something like that. I will use this without even going in with the pencil because there's like a layer of graphite kind of built up on here through however much use that I've got on it. And if it is like too dark, you don't have to try to peel back the layers or anything, just rub it on a scrap piece of paper and you can kind of rub off the top layer, and then it'll be a lot cleaner and easier to use if you're wanting that. I tend to not worry about it too much because I do so much shading that it all rubs off on the paper in the end anyways. When I just do a regular sketch, like it's fine, but then when I go in with the blending stump, that's when it kind of starts to get some depth to it, and I'm able to really build up the layers. Because I find that when you build up the layers the way that I do, the characters look more alive, and they're just more fun to draw that way to me. The next pencil that I use is the Graphite 500 for 0.3 sized graphite, and this is HB, just a really small size. I find this super helpful for like little details, sometimes hair or eyes. I don't use this near as much. It's much more likely to scratch the paper because the graphite is so small and pointy. Obviously, you're not going to want to use it for like lots of shading. Probably reserve it mostly just for adding little details. So I like this pencil a lot. It helps especially for some of the designs where I have like large pages and I'm doing lots of like really tiny details. I'll use this. I'll rely on this pencil to kind of refine the sketch. Also, sometimes if I have a messy sketch with my other pencil that's like, a really small sketch or something like that, I'll go in and kind of use this a little bit like a liner just to add in the details, and it makes it easier just because it's a different size lead and it's more condensed. But yeah, I don't use this one near as much. So you can see here, I'm just going in with this one to kind of add in some detail, some extra depth to these areas that I wouldn't be able to necessarily do as easily with the regular size pencil. And they do have 0.5 size pencils out there. I know a lot of people that just use 0.5 instead of 0.3, and that should really be fine. I personally like the 0.3 because I do tend to go into pretty small details for some parts of the pages, so this size is just helpful for me. If you're just learning to sketch or just kind of practicing, the regular 0.7 is really going to be fine for you. So next I'll talk about the erasers that I use. First, I use the Tombow Mononoke eraser, and you push on the back, the eraser comes out just like a mechanical eraser. I use this for details, I use it for erasing, I use it for cleaning up sketches, I use it for everything. I really love this pencil, and again, it lasts you forever as long as you don't lose it, and you can buy eraser refills, so totally worth investing in, and it works really great. One thing I like about this eraser over other erasers is I don't find that it leaves smudges on the page the way that some other erasers do. Specifically those little chunky erasers, like I used to use them to erase like the whole page. If I messed a sketch up, I'd go at it with one of those big chunky erasers and it would leave all these streaks on the page, especially on Moleskine. Moleskine tends to streak pretty easy with different erasers, and I find that it streaks less with these. Another thing I like about this mechanical pencil is that you can hold it like a pencil, obviously, so I find that with regular eraser, like one of those chunky ones, you might accidentally rip the page or bend the page or something like that if you're erasing too hard, but because you can control this easier because it's more like a pencil, you can erase pretty hard without risking damaging the page too much. And so I just really like these. They're very versatile. I'll use them for drawing pretty much the same way that I will use a pencil. Drawing hair, drawing shines on the eyes, drawing eyelashes. Any white lines on my page are usually made with this eraser, and it's just great. I really recommend having them. Another thing you can use it for is cleaning up sketches. If you're anything like me, I do really messy sketches and then I kind of carve them in to make them look decent, and in order to do that, I have to be able to erase all the messy lines, and a lot of times they're kind of all through the design, so I just use this and go in and kind of easily erase all of the sketchy, messy lines without having to worry about erasing of any of the actual sketch. So these are really, really great. I really recommend having them. I do also have the Mono Zero Tombow mechanical eraser. This one's just smaller, and between the two of them, I do recommend having the larger one over the smaller one just because it is sturdier, so it's going to be more versatile. It's going to be easier to erase large areas with the large one, whereas the little one, the eraser itself is going to bend a lot easier, so it can be harder to erase large areas, and it's not going to be able to erase as much as the larger one. That being said, I do find having the second smaller one is helpful, especially for smaller details or maybe smaller hairs. Although, a lot of times when I'm doing hairs, I have so many layers of graphite on the page by that point that the little one doesn't really make a dent in all of that graphite, so I do have to push pretty hard, and in order to do that, I will use the larger one. But I do like having the little one on hand. I'll use that one a lot of times more for eye details where there's not as much graphite on the page, and I need to get in pretty small, pretty detailed with it. And again, my same advice as before, if you can find them in a craft store, you're probably going to want to buy it there or off of Amazon over an art store, just because things tend to be more expensive in an art store. But they do have them on Amazon. They're not too hard to find. Just a couple dollars on Amazon and they'll last you forever. So I definitely recommend having one of these around in your pencil pouch because I use it for pretty much every drawing that I do. The second type of eraser that I use is the Kneaded eraser. I love these. Growing up, I always thought they were stupid because they don't erase your entire sketch. Like, no matter how hard you push with them, they're gonna leave residue on the page. But then I realized, years later, they're not really designed to get rid of your entire sketch. You can kind of use them the same way that a digital artist would use the opacity tool. So they'll draw, a messy sketch, and then they turn down the opacity and they draw over it. That's how I use a Kneaded eraser. I'll do a super messy sketch, and then I'll roll over it with a Kneaded eraser, and then I kind of have the ghost outline to go off of, and I'll do this a couple of times sometimes, and it's just super helpful. You can be super messy with your first sketch, and then just keep kind of rolling over it. And one advantage to this also is, like, if you mess up or something like that, instead of going in and just fully erasing it and risking damaging the page, you can just roll over it with the Kneaded eraser, and you'll be able to use the paper more than you would have if you went in and just kept erasing with a regular eraser. So this is going to prevent you from ripping holes in your page or really damaging the page if you just go in and roll over it with a Kneaded eraser. And they're just super helpful. I really like them, and again, they're pretty versatile, and you can mold them. So if you have one little area that you messed up or one little thing that you want to kind of redraw, you just go in and mold it to fit in that little area, and then you can redraw it. And again, these will probably last you a pretty long time. I only had to get a new one because my last one disappeared. I don't know where it went. It was in my coat pocket, and now it is not. So I was kind of sad, actually. I've had that one for probably around 5 years, and now I'm onto a new one, which I don't know what brand that one was, but it was probably the same brand as the one I use now. The one I use now is Faber-Castell. It's a lot lighter than the one I used to use, and I think that's just because it doesn't have as much graphite on it. the longer you have them, they can leave more smudges on the page sometimes if you're not careful, but again, they really last for a long time as long as you keep them in like a Ziploc bag or something, because they will stick to stuff, especially if it's warm. They'll kind of melt a little bit and kind of stick to whatever container they're in, so you're going to want to keep them in a Ziploc or something in your pencil pouch. And then you can also use them for like background effects. A lot of times I'll do smoky backgrounds or different types of shading that require a nice gradient, and the Kneaded eraser works great for that. So I'll go kind of back and forth with the blending stump and the Kneaded eraser to create different effects, and between the two of them you can achieve quite a few different types of textures, and it's pretty fun. And again, like I said, as long as you keep it clean, don't drop it in dirt or something like that, it'll last you for a really long time. So as you can see here, I didn't like the way that the hair looked, so I went in with the Kneaded eraser and just kind of wiped it away without really erasing too hard. I didn't want to totally erase it. I wanted to still be able to see the past sketch that I didn't really like. So I just roll over it with the Kneaded eraser, and then you can kind of see underneath and be able to adjust where the sketch went wrong without having to erase it completely. Then after that, I'll go in with my mechanical eraser and actually erase the bad lines that I don't want anymore. A lot of times I don't have too much of a plan when I go in with this in the background. I just kind of play around with it, and it can be a lot of fun. So the last art supply that I regularly use in my graphite drawings is a white Uniball gel pen. I am honestly not all that attached to this gel pen. I find this pen not to work super well, to be honest. It doesn't always come out super smooth. It'll like leave almost like a hole in the middle of the gel pen. As you can see here, it doesn't necessarily come out smooth. When it does come out smooth, it's great, and it is very nice white ink, and it's gonna cover up pretty much anything that you try to put it over. It's great for that. It's kind of a little bit like whiteout, you know, it's gonna cover up whatever's underneath of it. But my main thing is it just doesn't come out smooth, so you always have to like scribble on a scrap piece of paper and then do a little line, and then scribble on a scrap piece of paper and then draw on a little line. It works, I use it, so I just kind of kept using it, but if I ever find another brand that works better, then I probably will do that. But I think most white gel pens will probably work fine. I don't think you have to run out and buy this brand, and you don't really need this step anyway. I use it to add an extra little shine to their eye or to their lip, and it kind of brings the character, it gives them that last little spark of life, and I think it's a really fun thing to do at the very end when you're completely done. You're not going to want to use this pen when you're not completely done though, because if you draw like a shine on the eye when you're like halfway through and then you have some graphite on your hand and you go over it, or you close your sketchbook and some graphite from the other side of the page rubs on it, it's gonna start like looking gray, which you don't want to do. So if you just wait till the very end of your drawing to add a little white highlight to the eyes and the lips, then you're good to go, and it's a fun thing to end with. So I hope you guys were able to find this somewhat helpful. I tend to over-explain stuff like this. I once talked to some random person that I was working with for like 45 minutes about a pencil, and I'm pretty sure that person did not really appreciate that conversation, but you know, I can just talk about art supplies all the time for forever, and as long as no one stops me, I'll just keep talking about them. So hopefully this was kind of a nice overview without being too much information or too much unnecessary information. But if you have any questions about supplies, you can just comment them below. I'll answer as many as I can. And I'll have everything linked in the description, as well as I always have everything linked in my bio, which if you do happen to buy some of these art supplies off of Amazon, it would be really great if you could use my Amazon link, just because I get a tiny commission, which when I say tiny, like I mean tiny. Like I've been part of the Amazon affiliate program since like almost a year ago, and I think I've made a grand total of like $40, which is like not even enough money to pay for a tank of gas. So they always advertise it and they're like, oh, you can make so much money with the Amazon affiliate program, and I'm like, I don't know, but any little thing helps. So if you do buy them from Amazon, that would be really wonderful if you could use my affiliate link. But I do have the links, and they'll have the brands listed, so that'll hopefully make it easier for some of you guys to find the products. But yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, any kind of videos that you'd like to see in the future, like drop some ideas below, and I'll take a look at some of them, because I would really like to start posting more regularly, and yeah, looking for ideas, looking for different things that I can do. If you like this video and you want me to make more, then yeah, I hope to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.